we have a debt ceiling coming up. John Boehner is Speaker of the House. Barack Obama is the President of the United States. As different as Joe Biden and Barack Obama are, there are hardly two people on earth more different than John Boehner and Barack Obama. But at the beginning, at least, when they start to talk, and you can talk about this in some detail, there's some sense that each one has that they can work with the other. So I want you to talk about the relationship. And there is a scene in the book that I'll just say, because I'm going to steal your thunder because it's my favorite thing, is them having a meeting where Boehner's smoking a cigarette and drinking some red wine.
Merlot.
And Obama's drinking iced tea and chomping on Nicorette. And to me, that sort of like sums up the difference between the personalities in every possible way.
It does.
But tell us about that relationship and how it evolves.
Well, it actually, I mean, they called those the Nicorettes and Merlot meetings. And they should have had more. In fact, when I interviewed the president a couple of months ago, he was chewing a Nicorette. I was surprised. I thought that would be something he would do in private.
No.
But in pops the Nicorette, so, you know.
He's just proud to show you he's not smoking anymore.
Oh, okay. I thought it was the reality of he can't control
of his addiction, yes. Well, probably both.
Okay.
Probably both.
So whatever it was, it is to Boehner's credit that Boehner opened the door to this and said, look, the only way we're going to fix it is tax reform and entitlement reform. And the president said, oh, I'm all for tax reform, talks about entitlement reform. I have all the god-awful memos that they exchanged. I mean, they will, your brain will dry up and roll out your ear if you read those things. I mean,
I'll pass them.
Yeah, right. And they never kind of say, let's really get serious and get the best people and let's start working on how we're going to cut entitlements, how we're going to increase taxes or increase tax revenue. And it's a dance that they both, and all the evidence suggests, is serious. And this is where, in the end, I fault them both. I think that there's a war. Well, I know there's a war going on in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Would you agree as an expert reporter on this?
There's undoubtedly a war.
Yeah, and
war on both sides of the line.
Yeah, and that that the president didn't find a way to bring that to resolution. And he takes it to the 10-yard line and never gets it over the goal line. And there are all of the scenes and phone calls and rhetoric and so forth passed back and forth, but it's like it's almost like Desdemona's handkerchief in Othello, that there's a group of senators called the Gang of Six that decides, we're going to put out our plan like Simpson Bowles. It has more tax revenue than the president is proposing with the speaker. And they do this publicly, the Gang of Six. And in the White House, it's David Plouffe, the really key person in the White House, has the office closest to the Oval Office. It was Obama's campaign manager in 2008. Tremendous influence on these things. And he sees this and decides, because one of the senators is Boehner's closest friend, this is an opening. It'll give Boehner more maneuvering room. The Congressional Relations aide, Rob Neighbors, somebody critical to understanding the Obama White House, literally tells the president, if you don't propose more revenue in line with what these senators have done, you will be part of the weakest presidency in the history of mankind. Now, you're president of the United States and your respected figure of authority comes to you and says, if you don't do it this way, you're going to be part of the weakest presidency in the history of mankind. That gets your attention. The president eventually picks up the phone and calls Boehner, and they do this on the phone, which is stupid, quite frankly. It's not far from the Capitol to the White House, last time I checked. And generally, you can get the speaker to come down and meet. But in this is a miscommunication, and Boehner insists to this day that the president said he has to have $400 billion more in revenue in their deal. The president said no, it was just an option, but you dig into the granularity of this. It was clear the president wanted some change in the deal, either on the revenue end or the entitlement end.
Right.
And Boehner decides, I'm not going to be able to work a deal, and so he starts working a deal with the congressional leaders, and there are moments of immense emotion on the Mr. Cool in the White House.
Yes.
When he doesn't get calls returned from the speaker, finally talks to him, and as Boehner says, the president was spewing coals. Now, your image of Obama is not somebody spewing coals, and an aide in the Oval Office during that phone call, not listening to it, but watching it, said the president was so furious that the worry was he was going to break the telephone receiver. Now, you don't think of somebody breaking a telephone receiver very often, particularly Barack Obama. I asked him about it, and he said, I was very angry.
Yes.
And then, you know, it goes through this sequence of events that are, it's one of, have you ever had a time in your life where there have been 3 or 4 days when events got out of control and you never...
Every goddamn day.
Okay. Well, I know you have 3 or 4 days in every day with your multiple jobs, and that's what happened here. And there was no one in charge. There was no one kind of saying, wait, stop the music. Let's get everyone together. We are talking about, you know, this gets presented as it's about budgets, and it's about credit worthiness. It's about, you know, whether the Department of Energy is going to get more money than the Defense Department. No, this isn't about that. This is about the government's financial house is not in order, not even close.
Well, and no one's driving the bus.
Yeah, but the bus is we're all in it.
Yeah.
The entire country, and to a certain extent, everyone in the world is in that bus. Because as Tim Geithner tells the president repeatedly, if we don't fix this, we can trigger a depression worse than the 1930s. It would be indelible. It would last for generations. And so the risk is so great, and you would think, knowing that risk, they would find a way, and the president would find a way to get a handle on it. He did not. Certainly Speaker Boehner did not either. But, and some are quite critical of me for pointing at the president, but the president's the president.
Well, let's get to that. I want to say first of all, you'll notice when I introduced Bob, I did not include the word cheerful in my description because that's sort of scary. That's a very scary scenario.
Yes,
it is. We're all on the
It
bus
is.
and we're heading towards the cliff, and dear God, you know. When you get down to the bottom of it, right? There have been people have written about this. People have tried to sort through it, as you say. There's always some dispute on some of the key points. You at the end of the book, we're talking about this backstage. You've written a lot of books. In most of them, you have not rendered judgment. In some, you have. Yeah. Recently, a couple of the Bush books you did. But as a general...
You had to, when you knew the facts.
Right.
Yeah.
So in this case, you come down pretty hard on both sides. And I want you to talk about both now. Your first judgment is of the president. You say something along the lines of, you know, presidents, and I think you mean successful presidents, great, good presidents, work their will. That, you know, that relentless oppositionalism, strategy, tactics, the environment, the media, the economy, all that stuff, all the excuses, in the end, if you're a great president, a successful president, you somehow manage to work your will.
Well, not necessarily if you're a great or successful president. That's what the job is, to work your will. And I cite Reagan and Clinton, you know, which we could spend the whole night criticizing.
But very successful presidencies on their terms.
But when it got to the things that we're all in the bus on, to extend the analogy, they worked and made sure that it functioned. And in this case, they don't. And I was thinking about this the other day. Presidents working their will. Hate to bring up Richard Nixon, but he worked his will and decided, he was going to conduct an espionage and sabotage campaign against the Democrats and whoever else stood in his way, including the law.
Yeah.
And if you look at the history of that, he worked his will.
Yeah.
And
Maybe we should be glad Barack Obama doesn't.
well, I don't see it, in fairness to the president. I mean, you always look for these things.
Yeah.
I have not seen any sign of the Nixonian fortress,
Mentality, right.
yeah, I mean, when I'm working on this and I send in a list of questions to the president, not a restrictive list by
Right.
any means, but these
Some
are
things to
some of
think
the
about
things
before,
I want to ask about. And, I think when it arrived in the White House, the reaction among the communication people is, good, now we don't have to do that interview. And to the president's credit, he said, no,
Right.
we do.
Yeah.
And that there is a transparency there which deserves a lot of credit,
Right.
I think. But he didn't fix this, and if you get into the boring numbers and the reality of it and so forth, it's fixable.
Right.
Not in 5 years or 10 years, but there's a long-range fix here.
Well, luckily, we still have some time at some point in the future because we're not quite off the cliff yet. I want to ask you about Boehner, though.
You're skeptical of
No.
of my lack of cheerfulness and pessimism.
I just
No,
like
well.
I try to be a sunny guy here for the 92nd Street Y.
Okay.
I'm just saying I think we haven't hit the cliff yet. I mean that's just a fact. I mean there's
Yes, right. We're hanging on it.
the fiscal.
Right.
Well, as long if you look at not to get too geeky about it, but if we were about to plunge off the cliff, interest rates would not be at 0.5%.
I agree.
The global
I
financial
agree.
markets continue to think the American
Right.
economy has time to fix itself.
Right.
It's not infinite,
Right.
but
It's
the
just
market.
like the fall of 2008. The
Right.
global financial markets thought everything was fine.
Well, it's a slightly different story, but in any case.
But it's related that, I mean, we learn this in our business all the time. It's amazing what we don't know
Yes.
and don't find out about.
Yes.
And that there's a difference between reporting and prophecy.
Right, well, correct.
Yes.
Thank God.
And at the same time, there is evidence. And the evidence in this case, and I've tried to talk to the most serious people about this. This is different.
Well,
This is the warning flares are going off. And
we don't have a dispute about that at all.
Okay.
All I mean is that
be cheerful about it.
All I mean is that
Make them fireworks.
all
It's the
I'm-
4th of July.